Hello, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the NFL season. It's so glad to have you back with us tonight. I've got Austin here. I've got Shane here. We are so excited. It was another fantastic week of NFL football. We're here to talk about as much of it as we can pack into the next 30 or 40 minutes. We're going to start with lead stories. Then we'll go into somebody that needs more attention. Then we got the struggle bus back this weekend. Then we're going to pick two games for our contest that we've got going on. Let's get right to it. Shane, what's your first lead story of the week, man?
My lead story should be a slap on the back for Austin. The Minnesota Vikings. I think offensively and defensively, they've surprised a lot of people. On our show, we talked about how we thought that they would be competitive, but we didn't know what this was going to turn into. But Kevin O'Connell, again, takes a quarterback that a lot of people have written off, gives him opportunities and lets him make some reads that your average offensive coach doesn't. There's not a lot of guys that are calling some of those pass patterns from your own three. And he let Donald pull the trigger. And when you have some athletes at wide receiver, it comes through. And so I think Minnesota, you could have put in the maybe give them some more credit segment, but I thought for the first 2 weeks, they've been probably the most impressive team, I thought.
I'm connected to a couple of Vikings fans, so happy for all of them and all of Minnesota Nation getting off to a much hotter start than anybody thought. Austin, feel free to comment on your Vikings or run on into your lead story.
We'll move off. We'll pat them on the back maybe later. But I did want to kind of give the opposite take that I had last week, or maybe show the other side of it rather than the opposite of it. I talked about how passing was down in week one, and that trend sort of continued some. But instead of looking at that negative passing down light, I want to look at the positive of rushing is up. And not only is rushing is up at historical numbers. Teams are averaging 125 rushing yards per game this year. That's the highest through the first 2 weeks of a season in 41 years.
Wow.
You have to go back to the 80s to the last time we saw teams averaging 125 yards or more through 2 weeks. So rushing's up. The NFL is changing constantly and adapting, and it's an arms race. And as we saw the development of big power passing offenses, we've seen the defense now turn to more cover two style defenses, more nickel and lighter boxes. And teams have said, okay, well, if you're just going to let us run for 4 yards a pop, we're going to take that all day, and not really think twice about it. So that's how the NFL is evolving. We'll see how this kind of cat and mouse game continues for the rest of the season. I'm excited to watch it.
I love it. I've been hoping teams would do this for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years. They started two or three seasons ago because you saw this trickle run game start up. But I love it. I love the fact that the run game is back. And again, here in 3 or 4 seasons, it'll cycle off once defenses readjust. But, it's not as easy as just readjusting, say, oh, they're running the football, let's bring in our big personnel, because all of a sudden now the GM who has built the team to stop the pass, you're pulling off maybe your 7th, your 9th, and your 11th best defensive player to bring in bigger guys to stop the run. But that's, your 16th, 19th, and 21st best defensive player. So you're pulling in less talented people to try to size match here on this running game stuff. So you kind of lose either way, rocking a hard place. But I love it, man. I can enjoy a 42-41 football game, but I love the run game too. I love to see that 17-10 score a good bit, So bring it on. I'm in love with it. The team I want to call out this week is the Arizona Cardinals. Shane told us during the preseason, and Shane, I'm sorry if I'm still in your second lead story here, man. Shane told us Arizona's going to be good. But oh my gosh, when we saw them, they looked pretty good against Buffalo, but against the Rams, I thought this was going to be one of the fun games of the weekend, and it wasn't. It was only fun for Arizona and Arizona fans. Kyler Murray had a fantastic day at 266 yards, 17 of 21 for 3 TDs and no picks. James Conner, 21 carries for 122 yards. The whole team went 5.8 yards per carry. And then Marvin Harrison had 4 catches for 130 yards and could have caught more. I believe he himself said the only 4 drops, or the only 4 incompletes of the day for Kyler Murray, were all to him, and he could have had a much bigger day. So big day for Arizona. They look really good. They're only 1-1, but so far they look really good. So it looks like it's going to be at least a fun season for the Cardinals, if not something bigger. But hats off to the Arizona Cardinals during these first 2 weeks. They are really looking good so far. And I didn't even mention the defense, which held this Rams team to only 10 points. Shane, your next lead story of the day, man.
My next lead story, I will be mentioning the Cardinals later in the episode, but my next lead goes right off of what Austin talked about. We go against the GM for the Saints and what they've done and what they've spent, but the offensive turnaround that they've pulled off, regardless of what you see in the numbers, is a pure rushing attack. They've unleashed Alvin Kamara. Tyson Hill is being used in ways that he's always been capable of doing, but that they didn't really open him up offensively before. And they're picking their spots. When you can't sit back and decide they're going to throw the ball or they're going to run it, that's what opens up the offense. The Saints, I mean, they haven't played the greatest. They played against the Panthers, which was nothing. But, I mean, even on the show when we talked last week, I did not expect for them to be able to walk all over the Cowboys. And really, there was nothing that Mike Zimmer and that defense could do. And Micah Parsons even said it himself, like we had no answers. They outmanned us across the board. But like Austin said, and you've mentioned, offenses are cyclical. And when you start to get some openings, the other thing is that's controlling the clock. And it takes a lot of those clock management questions out of your head coach's mind because you're just eating time up to take it away from those quarterbacks to be able to come back. So
I love it. I may mention a Saints personnel person here in a few minutes. We'll see. We'll see what y'all end up doing here. Austin, your next lead story.
I want to talk about a division that I find myself paying a lot of attention to because my co-hosts of the Tricky Takes podcast are Browns fans. So we talk about the AFC North quite a bit, and the AFC North is completely on its head right now. If you asked me what I thought, and we did do the standings, and that kind of stuff preseason, and I picked the Ravens to be first in the division, the Bengals to be second in the division, the Browns to be third, and the Steelers to be fourth. And it is quite literally the exact opposite of that, with the Steelers on the top, Browns in second, and the Ravens on the bottom, even though, the Ravens and the Bengals are both 0-2, so who's 0-2 is worse? I don't know. The Ravens lost to the Raiders this week, so that's probably worse. But the Raiders are a surprisingly good ball team, so I don't know who's worse. I don't think this trend continues. Obviously, we've got this QB mix-up in Pittsburgh with Justin Fields starting these first two games. When Russ gets healthy, do they bench Justin Fields for Russ, even though Justin Fields is winning games? And if they do, what does the locker room think about that? But does Justin keep winning them football games, really, even if they do leave him in, or do you trust the veteran of Russell Wilson? So I think that's a really sticky situation. I trust Mike Tomlin to handle it well. And then, looking back at the bottom of that league with the Bengals and the Ravens, Joe Burrow historically starts really slow. That's just kind of his MO. He had a pretty solid game against the Chiefs this week. Or actually, I take that back. He had a really good game against the Chiefs that week, but the Chiefs are going to chief, and they're going to win football games that they shouldn't, just like they did against the Ravens in week 1. So they both played the Chiefs. So that at best, you're expecting them both to be 1-1 right now. So I'm not worried about it. Although on the front, when you first take a look at it, it does seem very concerning.
I really felt like almost every game this week had something big that I wanted to include in my lead stories, but I only get 2. So here's my next one. It's the Green Bay Packers winning. It seems fairly innocuous that they won this game, especially against the Colts team on the road that is still young and the roster still has holes. But for the Packers to do this without Jordan Love, at a certain point, we're being told Jordan Love will be back this year. And if he comes back to a team that's 2-5 or 1-6 or something like that, that's a whole lot less exciting. And you kind of almost wish, well, maybe he'll just take his time and we won't rush him back. But if the Packers can here and there tread water, catch wins like this against a team that they had a chance to beat at home, and they did, then that really keeps you in the ballgame here for the playoffs and the NFC side. And maybe with Detroit not off to a hot start either, you're not out of it for the division race either. Minnesota's right there in the mix. So hats off to the Packers for what I thought was a big win, because you just didn't want to start 0-2 and have Jordan Love out for several more weeks after that. That's a really rough start to what a lot of people thought was going to be a really promising season. And they avoided that. They're sitting here at 1-1. So even if they lose next week and they're back at 1-2, they're still in that 500 mix for whenever Jordan Love comes back. So hats off to the Packers. Let's give out a little bit of attention to people who deserve maybe a little bit more of it than what we think they're getting so far. Shane, who do you want to put the spotlight on first, man?
Well, as I mentioned, Ben, I was going to bring up the Cardinals later on in the show. Here's the time. Specifically, Kyler Murray. There were a couple of passes in that game where I would have taken him over any other quarterback in the league. He hit a pass on a wheel route with two defenders and just dropped a complete dime where there's very few QBs that would have been able to pull the trigger on that. I'm a guy that told Kyler Murray he should have taken that baseball money. I didn't know how he was going to play out, and I was worried with him with Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator. I think he pulls the trigger much better now. He probably has gotten a little bit more in his playbook. Maybe there's less Call of Duty coming out, but that game, I think that he has taken control of the offense, and I also think that he's finding McBride, who I think is an undervalued tight end, and that offense can get going. Like you said, with James Conner, always a favorite back of mine, and I feel like with Arizona throwing the ball around, he becomes even more dangerous.
We heard a lot more about Marvin Harrison and the Cardinals in general this weekend than we did Kyler Murray. But you're right. Kyler Murray, at least so far, first two games, is looking like what we saw 2 or 3 years out of him. And that, again, how good can that be? We kind of never got a chance to find out because of the injury. But he's back on track again, it seems. So time to find out how good he can really be here. And I'm looking forward to that, actually. Austin, who needs more attention?
This isn't necessarily what this segment's about, but Ben knows I'm going to do this sometimes, and he keeps inviting me back, so I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to talk about new Panthers quarterback one, Andy Dalton, who has not, he played, I guess, one snap this season. One attempt, no completion on it. But Andy Dalton is getting the start for Carolina, at least in week 3. I don't know how long the benching of Bryce Young is going to last. I feel really bad. I don't want to talk about that whole situation. I want to talk about Andy Dalton, who has had an underrated career. People didn't even know he was still in Carolina this year. And I just wanted to give you a little recap about what Andy Dalton's done in his career. And I think he's going to do okay and will be an upgrade over Bryce Young, who, potentially still really good maybe in the future, but right now is not looking too great. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler in Cincinnati. Nobody forgot about that. What you might have forgotten was after his stint in Dallas, when Dak broke his leg and he kind of underperformed for the Cowboys in that season, he then got a chance to start in Chicago, also went really bad, and then everybody wrote him off, and it was like, he's done. I completely erased 2022 from my memory for multiple reasons, one of which being the New Orleans Saints year that Andy Dalton played. He was really good. He threw 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. His quarterback rating was 95.2, which was actually second best of his entire career, minimum 10 games played, and he played in 14 in this year in New Orleans. He was a really solid quarterback the last time we saw him get a full gig. He started one game in Carolina last year. I think he is going to be okay. I think the Panthers are going to win a game this season, whether they want to or not. It's just the NFL. Teams win games accidentally all the time. So I'm not, sounding the alarm bells in Carolina as much as a lot of the people around me here are. I don't think this team's going to go 0-17. I think they're going to win 1 or 2 games. I'm not bold enough to say 3, but I wouldn't write it out of the equation completely.
Listen, Austin, if you didn't do that, I'd be disappointed. Okay, so keep it up, man. You're right about Andy Dalton, 100%, and I hate it for Bryce Young. We'll see. I'm sure at some point in the season he'll get another chance. But those of you, especially in the fantasy realm, don't dump all your Panthers stock just yet. So Jatavian Sanders sitting there at tight end, Adam Thielen at wide receiver, Chuba Hubbard there at running back. Andy Dalton's going to utilize them, and they will produce something. And again, they will compete. So while that may not excite anybody long term, and I know it won't, the miracle of Andy Dalton at this age continues, and he will produce something, and they will be competitive. So, ultimate bridge quarterback there, and hang on. Let's see. What do I want to talk about? I want to talk about Clint Kubiak, Saints offensive coordinator. I'm not too worried about how much credit he's getting right now, because if this keeps up, he's going to get boats and boatloads of credit for this. But so far in 2 games, y'all have already mentioned it, he looks like he knows what he's doing. He's just pushing all the right buttons. I mean, run game, pass game, deep pass, short pass, screen game, you name it, against a woeful Panthers team, but against what we all considered and expected to be a good Cowboys defense in Dallas. So hats off to Clint Kubiak. Again, it's 2 games, but through 2 games, they look really sharp. There are receivers open, and Derek Carr is finding them and hitting them deep and short and crossing routes and everything else. And then the running game is just powerful, and it's almost unstoppable. When you've got the passing game along with it, it's hand in glove. And then the defense is very physical too. Tom Brady mentioned that on Sunday more than once. That defense is physical as well. So it looks like a promising season here for the Saints, which nobody really expected too much of heading into this season. Let me share a screen here a little bit. Let's bring on the old struggle bus. Last week we introduced the struggle bus, so here it comes. I got Brian Daboll driving this thing this week. Bless his heart. I feel sorry for him. I don't even know if that's his fault, to be honest. Ultimately, I did do what Shane suggested here. The Carolina Panthers are now sponsoring the struggle bus until further notice. You talk about some ugly football, man, and Andy Dalton's going to help. But they are on the struggle bus until further notice. They are sponsoring this thing. I've got Brian Daboll driving it. And then I'll let you guys, by the way, we added Kirk Cousins last week and the Bengals run defense last week. Brian Daboll is frustrated, and I hope he survives this, but I'm not sure he will. The way the NFL works is usually either the general manager is out or the head coach is out after about 3 seasons. And that's about where the Giants are sitting right now. So I hope Daboll gets to stay. I'm not totally sure I want the Giants general manager to stay, but very often in this league, somebody's got to go. After 3 or 4 losing seasons or 3 or 4 struggling seasons, however you want to frame that, usually somebody's out the door. But the Giants are struggling right now. You had the beatdown at the hand of the Vikings at home first week, and then the woeful Commanders come in. You're playing there, and because of kicker issues and kicker decisions, you lose that game. And, that was just an ugly, ugly game for the Giants. So Brian Daboll, he's the one right now, and I'm not even sure how much of this I lay at his feet, although he's got a part of it. But Daboll's got the struggle bus right now, so he's driving it. Shane, who do you want to put on a passenger on our struggle bus this week?
You're on my same highway for this one, Ben. I put the entire Giants, not just Brian Daboll, on this one. I think you got to see the behind the scenes on the Hard Knocks. I questioned the scouting staff. I questioned GM. I questioned Daboll. Then when it comes out that Graham Gano was injured already and he had made that known and he was on the injury list, then to find out that they only had 52 active players, they could have signed a kicker to have him ready, to have Gano then come out and hurt, then to have the Washington Redskins win a game in which they scored 0 touchdowns and break an NFL record by doing that. There's nothing about the Giants that are clicking right now.
No.
You look at Saquon Barkley looking better in Philadelphia. The offensive line, which has been a major issue for the Giants for, I mean, if you're being honest, maybe a decade now. Even when they were winning, there were still some holes to be filled. It's never been fixed. As much as you want to go against Danny and what he can do, it's awful hard when you're just being bum rushed on constant defensive pressure. Like I said, and you said, I don't know where all of it lies, but I mean, if I'm the Mara family, I might clean complete house, restart again with a GM, a coach. Let's see where we can go. They have some pieces, but they are one of the teams that I think has looked terrible throughout this season. Like when we talked about the Carolina Panthers, I don't think anyone thought that this was going to go well for them this year. But there are a lot of people that thought the Giants could come back and be competitive, and I don't think they've looked well in either of their games so far this season.
No, they look sick. They don't look competitive, even though they had a chance in this game. Obviously, they probably should have won, honestly, against Commanders, but they do not look well. This looks like a long season ahead for the Giants, even though, they're going to win some games at some point, but this looks like a very long season for the Giants. Austin, who deserves a ride on the struggle bus this week, man?
Well, I've got first overall pick, Caleb Williams, who I think a lot of people thought was coming into what might be the greatest situation ever for a first overall taken quarterback, with a lot of weapons at his disposal. And, he should be successful and, is even going to be able to lead this Bears to a winning season potentially. And that's just not the case. I think we tricked ourselves by, looking at what CJ Stroud did and thinking that was normal. It's not. It's going to take a while for this kid to acclimate to the National Football League. It takes every other quarterback besides CJ Stroud time to acclimate to the NFL, and he's no different. The stats are really bad, though. He has the lowest or second lowest QBR, like the third lowest passer rate. He has been sacked the most times by any quarterback, which you'd think with his scrambling ability, he would get sacked less, but he doesn't know how to gauge the size and speed of these NFL defenders yet. So he thinks he can get away in times that he can't. And he, thinks he can put the ball over some of these guys' heads, and he can't. And it's things that he is learning and will unfortunately will have to learn very quickly because he's starting, and I don't think the Bears plan on sitting him to learn anytime soon. The hard thing is it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle once you let it out of its lamp and start your rookie quarterback. It looks like what's happening to Bryce Young right now in Carolina when you put the genie back in the bottle. So you never want to do that. And I don't think the Bears will, no matter how bad Caleb Williams looks. I think they're just going to wear it on the chest as best they can and hope he takes his lumps and learns. But this is the danger of starting a young rookie quarterback, and this is why I applaud and I predicted that the New England Patriots wouldn't start their guy Drake May yet. And it's a valuable lesson to be learned by all.
Yeah, listen, I love CJ Stroud coming out of the draft. I love Caleb Williams, not quite as much, but almost as much. But Caleb right now looks like what I thought CJ Stroud would look like to start off his rookie season. And Stroud didn't. He hit the ground running. I figured he'd be at least half a year, if not the whole season, kind of catching up. And you're right. That's what rookie quarterbacks typically do, and that's what Caleb is struggling with right now. I figure by, midpoint Thanksgiving, somewhere in there, Caleb kind of gets his feet under him and starts, really producing something this year. But we'll see. Right now, it's been a struggle, and he's got to ride on the struggle bus. Let's move on. Vikings and Texans. Look who's 2-0. Minnesota. Not surprising. Got the Texans coming to town. They're also 2-0. Texans are 2.5-point favorites. Shane, do you like the Texans to win and cover that 2.5 or not?
I do like the Texans to win, and I do like them to cover, but I think that that's going to be just about it. I think Minnesota is going to play well defensively, and they've shown that they have firepower. And Darnold's not going to make a ton of mistakes. I think this game is actually going to be probably the best game next week. But I think the Texans pull it out. Really nothing against the Vikings on this. Had it been somebody else, I would have put the Vikings with points. But I think the Texans are playing under control, and they haven't made an awful lot of mistakes. So.
Austin, are you going to reverse
Ben,
curse your Vikings again?
You don't even have to ask, Ben. Just move that football over. You already know where I'm going with this. No further questions, Your Honor.
Listen, I know a lot of people who successfully reverse curse and wear old shirts and everything else, but you're on a hot streak right now, so why quit?
It's working.
Right? All right, listen. I too am going to pick the Texans to win and cover. No disrespect to the Vikings. They are playing better than I expected, and Sam Darnold is kind of he looks even better than I thought he would with weapons. I thought with weapons he could look okay. He's looking even better. But this week, this opponent, I thought the line would be bigger than this. I was a little surprised when I saw it at 2.5. And that's not anything on the Vikings. That's on the Texans. I just think the Texans are that good, and they're playing good right now. So out of the teams that we expected to be good, Houston's living up to that to a large degree right now. So I do feel like that Houston defense is going to give problems to Sam Darnold. So I've got the Texans winning and covering, and I probably would have had that even if it had been, say, a 4 or a 5-point spread, quite honestly. Not a runaway, but I do like the Texans in this particular matchup. Let's move on to our final segment of the night. Before our final 60, the Patriots at 1-1, the Jets at 1-1. I'll get to our points here in just a second. The Jets at home are a 6.5-point favorite. Shane, it's your team. Where are you feeling on this?
Yeah, I mean, last week I was right that go against the points that they were going to just be under. Got that by half a point, and that the Seahawks were going to win. But actually, to kind of kick off of what Austin, first of all, I think the Jets do win this game. I don't think they cover the points. I also think that this may be the game where you see Drake May.
Really?
I think there's a good chance that you may get an injury out of there, but I also think that offensively, if you watch the tape of that Patriots game, there would have been any other quarterback you probably could have come away with some more points. Did a lot of under coverage to tight ends and things like that. I'm not saying the Patriots have a strong wide receiving core, but I think the time is coming where Drake May is going to get a shot. I think the defense is performing even better than they thought it would. And I think that's kind of why they went with Jacoby Brissett to kind of placate how that will go. But I think there's a chance he gets a go inside this game. So
even more reason to watch it, as if we needed any more reason to watch a game like this. Austin.
Yeah, I love a divisional game. I have to disagree with the Drake May take, though. I think they're going to be super ultra cautious with him. At least that's how I've seen it all summer, and I hope it still plays out that way because I really like Drake May and what he can be. So I am going to take the Jets to cover this point spread. As I said on another show, or maybe even this one, 2 weeks in, I'm going to trust my preseason evaluation. After this week is when I will finally take into consideration what we've seen in the first 3 weeks and fully I've bumped things slightly here and there in my, in head canon and my power rankings internally, but I don't, trust the film from the first 2 weeks entirely until I see it a third week in a row. 2's not a pattern, but 3 is. So I trust my preseason scouting and what I thought was going to happen more than I trust what numbers have told me for the 2 weeks. And what numbers have told me is that the Patriots probably cover this, but what I thought during the offseason was that the Jets probably demolish the Patriots. So we're going to take them to cover. I do think it's going to be a very entertaining game. I don't think if they do cover, it will be anything more than 10 points at most. I think the Patriots are a quality football team. whether it's Jacoby Brissett at quarterback or not.
I like it. I've got the Jets to win, but I've got the Patriots to cover. My reasoning is this. The Jets haven't yet hit their stride, and we all know it. This isn't the Jets team that, even considering that Aaron Rodgers is healthy and looks like he's working his way in, this isn't the Jets team that we kind of sort of expect has a chance to make the playoffs or maybe even do some damage in the playoffs, perhaps. They're just not there yet. So until then, I expect this game to be close. The Patriots, I feel like, should be able to run the football with Ramondre Stevenson. I don't think there's much doubt about that. The Jets have given up running yards in both games they've played. And while I do expect Aaron Rodgers to pass the ball more in this game, I don't necessarily know that that's going to translate into touchdowns against a pretty good Patriots defense here. So for me, the line just felt a little fat, although I do like the the Jets to win this game at home. That'll be my pick. Let's talk about our points just for a quick second. Shane is tied with me at 120 points. Austin is sitting at 60, but part of that, and I don't think he minds that, is because he's reverse cursing his Vikings. So I think he will happily give up points in a contest to which there is no actual prize in order to have his team continue winning. Correct, Austin?
No shot at you, Ben. It's nothing personal.
Let's finish up here. Final 60, Shane.
So my 60 kind of goes along with the points that don't mean anything for you winning a championship. And my 60 goes for the Washington State Cougars, one of the two remaining former Pac-12 teams that are now going to be rebuilt as they steal teams from the Mountain West. I thought they played an excellent game against Washington. And Washington State has always been competitive. You know, they're in the middle of nowhere. They always find quarterbacks that can throw and run. And I thought defensively they played way better than expected against Washington. Just one of those early season games that normally comes at the end of the year in the Apple Bowl, Apple Cup, and to have them have a chance for that game to be early on, I thought it was an excellent game to watch.
I'm going to be a joker here for a second because you're 100% right about that. But I saw some smart aleck on X or Instagram post a power rankings of the current Pac-12, which of course has two teams, and they had one team in first and the other team in second. I don't remember who that is. Is that Washington State and Oregon State? Is that
Oregon
right?
State played well too. They barely lost to Oregon, which, you know, in years past, you would have picked them to be dominated as well. And if you look at the former Pac-12 teams, they were all actually doing pretty well right now. So,
yeah, stay tuned. If you're a fan of college football out west, stay tuned. That's not the final chapter on all of that out there. That is going to continue to morph over the next decade, I feel certain. Austin, your final 60.
I'm going to start this off the way I start out. Any conversation on Thanksgiving when it's just too much fun. And that's, I don't mean to get political, but today is National Voter Registration Day. So if you haven't registered to vote in your state yet, go ahead and do that. It's a very important thing to do here in the United States. If you're in the U.S., please register to vote and do your due diligence and, vote for who you want to vote for and vote for yourself, not for, someone who told you what to do. So that's my final 60.
Yeah. I love it. I agree 100% with all of that. So I don't have a significant final 60. I do want to give a shout out to Youssef, who's not with us anymore on our show. He's off doing a couple of his own shows. So check him out on YouTube. We'll give him another shout out here as we're still thinking of him. I think he's still doing the YouTube. If not, you can catch him on X. They call me Mr. U, and you can access all of his stuff there. So Youssef, we enjoyed it. We'll look forward to seeing you and being on your show here over the next few weeks as well. All right. Anybody else with anything before we shut this thing down? Everybody, thank you for listening. Enjoy your next week of NFL. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to come in with a little bit of humble pie, a little bit of rooster bragging, and we'll continue on with everything else. Have a great one. Bye.